Hey art nerds! This week for My Life with ADHD, I want to talk about the challenges of juggling too many balls at any given time. So what does it mean to be juggling too many balls? Well, it means you've got too many projects going on at the same time. And as artists, we're often encouraged to have multiple hustles because none of our hustles actually pay any money. From conventions to comics to freelance illustration to trying to find long-term work, artists really have their work cut out for them and are often required to wear many hats and handle many roles. For ADHD artists, this is even more challenging because many of us would love to just be able to focus on one thing at a time, give it our best, and not have to split our attention. Many of us aren't really designed to be entrepreneurs from that sort of point of view, where we're functioning as our own secretaries, our own managers, our own bookies, people booking agents, that sort of stuff. But we find ourselves having to wear those hats, and maybe we don't wear them very well. Even though we try to give it our best, it may not be something we're suited for, we may not have the background to do it, we may not have the connections to do it, or we may not have the resources to help make it possible. We may find it difficult to keep up with emails, we may find it hard to see it through to the finish line, or we may not promote ourselves as much as we should due to a variety of reasons. I don't know about you guys, but I really juggle with the problem of juggling too many balls. So for me, this often is doing commissions, conventions, Kara as a print comic, Kara as a web comic, this channel, the blog, and just other various aspects of artist life, sending my work out to agents, sending my work out to editors, pitching comics, all that sort of stuff. And unfortunately for me, all of those things have to be done at the same time. They all have to be done immediately, and it is extremely overwhelming and often quite taxing. Sometimes this feeds into my anxiety and may make it difficult for me to get back to my emails. I may read an email, think, oh shoot, this is important, let me get back to it when I have brain space, and then I just completely forget about it. So how do we juggle handling too many balls, and how is this detrimental to us as ADHD artists? It can be really tempting to juggle too many balls at one time. I mean, when things are good, they're really good. You can flow from one project to the next. You're always very stimulated. You've always got something fun and exciting to work on, and you've always got something to be excited about. If you're not really feeling one project, you can always work on another, and you can think about future projects while you're working on your current projects. It really seems like it's a system where you're constantly busy, you're constantly creating new contact, you're constantly engaging other people, and just in general, you're making a lot of great work, right? But when it fails catastrophically. And in my experience, it's starting to fail more and more. My life is a mess, and I think my life is a mess because I'm trying to juggle too many balls. And the reason I'm juggling too many balls is I'm trying to make ends meet. My life is a literal mess. As projects and ideas pile up, things go unfinished, my personal work goes unattended to, and I have a lot of difficulty prioritizing projects. I'm a mental mess as I struggle to think about what I'm working on, what I need to accomplish that day, and I struggle to keep focused and keep my anxiety at bay. Anxiety that stems from being afraid that I'm going to forget something or drop one of these many balls. My career is a mess. I feel like I'm making no progress. It is very slow, laborious, and difficult for me to make progress because I'm edging so many things along very slowly. It's like I'm trying to move a mountain instead of just picking up a pebble and walking. Everything has to be kind of just edged along when I have time to actually do it. And I have a lot of trouble actually prioritizing things. I find that I put the things that are actually important, that might have meaningful, impactful actions on my life, that might actually improve my life and career. Those are so hard to put in the forefront because I'm constantly putting out small fires or constantly working on small projects that have high priority but very low relevance or importance. And these can lead to other problems. I struggle with burnout, I struggle with depression, I struggle with anxiety, and I really struggle with self-loathing. So, what do? The obvious answer is just don't do so much, right? Like, that's what all the books say. Delegate. Don't take on so many projects. Find other people to help you out. Collaborate. Well, what if those are just not options? What if It's super hard to make ends meet as it is, and you really feel like you have to do all of these things just to pay the bills. What if you really don't feel like you can delegate these tasks? If you're a writer, if you're an artist, you can't delegate those tasks to somebody else, and you may not have the funds to make it worth their while. And believe me, in art, it can be incredibly difficult to find even collaborators, let alone volunteers. So sometimes delegation, offloading your plate is just not an option. Sometimes you've taken on these commitments and you really do have to see them through. And sometimes it's just a matter of trying to get to that end point and not getting horrifically burnt out. So realistically, what are some things that we can do that will help with burnout and juggling too many balls? I don't know. I don't really have a good answer. I try to take walks every day. I try to take breaks. I try to remind myself of what my real priorities are, and I try to focus on doing those things. And I'm in a privileged position. I do have some financial padding that I can rely on so that I don't have to take on 1,000 tiny commissions to pay a vet bill or to pay my rent just that month. I don't have to make a bunch of last-minute, anxious, scared decisions just to try and get from point A to point B. But I still do make those sort of decisions. I still think in rabbit mode, very much survival, very much struggle oriented, and I don't necessarily take the big risks that would actually pay off. This is something I'm going to continue to work on, and I encourage you guys to help find your own areas in your life where you can improve on this, even if it doesn't mean putting down all those balls. Because like we said, sometimes that's just not an option. Sometimes you can't just take a vacation from your roles. And if you're self-employed, vacations are usually hard to come by. Yes, people who work day jobs and do art as a hobby, they can set hard limits of, I'm not going to answer during these hours. I'm not going to be here during these hours, because they're not actually that reliant on the income. But for those of us who are reliant on the income and have to take it when it comes, and we can't be particularly picky, that's not something we feel we have as an option. And I know we're encouraged to start showing that kind of agency, but when you have rent to pay or a sick pet to take care of, it doesn't feel like you've got a choice. So I know this is not an upbeat sort of topic, but I think it's a really relevant topic. I think it's something all of us struggle with, especially because I see so many of my artistic peers taking on more and more projects, doing more and more with less and less time, dealing with burnout, dealing with feeling like they're hounded by their customers or by their friends, feeling like they have to do everything all the time forever. That is a huge source of pressure. And even though the art community has gotten a lot better about destigmatizing taking breaks and mental health care and not pushing yourself too hard, the hard reality remains that even though we have a lot of good vibes coming in and a lot of positive affirmations, we're still not necessarily getting our bills paid. The ever-present, ever-relevant due date on those bills can't be shifted or adjusted. And even if you work hard to cut the excess out of your life, it might still be a problem. You might still struggle to pay your rent every month, living in the cheapest apartment you can find. You might still struggle to pay your vet bills, even though you live at home with mom and dad and they're taking care of the rent for you, and your bills are cell phone, car insurance, car note, cat. I mean, those are realities, and sometimes we don't talk about those. Sometimes we just kind of shuffle that off like, oh, you should have found a real job. You should have actually pursued a different line of work. And sometimes that's just not a reality. So, how do you guys handle juggling your workload? What do you do to make juggling your workload easier? What do you do when someone throws a new ball into the mix and it's something else you have to juggle that you didn't plan for? What do you do when someone cancels a job on you and you have to struggle to find income to fill that hole? We as artists work in a very uncertain industry. There are no promises, there are no guarantees, there's very little loyalty, even amongst friends sometimes. So what do you do to try and take care of yourself and bridge those gaps? Let me know in the comments below. I am really interested in hearing from you. For me, I don't always have the best coping mechanisms. That's something I'm still working on. But some things that I do when I feel very overwhelmed is, as you know, I make lists. And I have My Life with ADHD about making lists that might actually work for you. I know a lot of people complain that lists don't work for them. I get that. There's a lot of list making methods that aren't very effective for people with ADHD. So I'll share some of my favorites, and maybe they'll become your favorites. And if not, I understand. Not every method works for every person. I will also go for walks, give myself time to think, give myself time away from the project, take a mental brain break. I'll take baths, and often, I mean, not just to clean myself, but to relax. And often as I'm bathing, my brain will solve the problem for me passively. I don't even have to think about it. Those are the 3 big things that I do to help with the juggling of the too many balls. But I've also tried to reprioritize my life, and I'm not 100% successful. I still do fall into the same traps. But this year, I'm really focusing on working on 7-inch Kara. That is super important to me. I really want to launch Volume 2 as a Kickstarter this fall. That trumps almost everything else going on in my life, because I have put it off. I've put other people's stuff before it for way too long, and that doing those favors didn't pay off. So it's time I do myself a true favor, and I put my needs first. I'm also working on finding more stable professional work, either as a teacher or as a freelancer or as an illustrator, although as a freelancer, that's not very stable, right? But I am trying to work myself back into being in the position where I can start doing that again. So I need to redo my portfolio. I've been making some new pieces, sharing those new pieces with you guys. I've been contacting art supply companies to see if they're interested in looking for an art rep, someone to make art or tutorials for them. None of those are for sure things. So what I'm really focusing on is getting my teacher's certificate and going into teaching, because at least that's income I could count on. All the rest is nice, but I can't pay my bills with it the way it is. And I'm tired of planning my life around unpredictable, unstable income. And I'm tired of that anxiety. I'm tired of juggling all those balls. It isn't adding to my quality of life. So I'm trying to work myself into a position where I'm doing less and getting more out of life. This means I've cut back on conventions. I'm doing far fewer conventions this year, and the conventions I did do, I'm trying to be careful and mindful of what they can do for me. So I'm doing ALAC in June, which is a librarians conference, and since I have a children's book out, I hope that will help benefit that. I did MTAC because that's Nashville, and that usually does quite well for me. I'm doing MechaCon because that's in New Orleans, and that used to do quite well for me, and I want to move back to New Orleans, so I'm trying to reestablish some of those contacts. I am doing a very small library con because so those are some of the ways I'm trying to reprioritize my life, trying to take better care of myself, and trying to juggle fewer balls. I am also killing the blog in 2019, woo! Which is going to really alleviate my plate, and I can focus that attention on things that are actually beneficial and that people might actually enjoy. So those are some of the things I'm doing to sort of reprioritize my life and juggle fewer balls. I can't do it right away. I did make some promises. I'm a woman of my word. Even when other people break their word, go back on their word, or change their word, I still stick to mine. That's really important to me. And it's led me to a lot of really bad situations, but that's just something I stick by. That's one of my codes. But that doesn't mean you have to do that either. If somebody changes the rules, the terms of engagement, you can do what you need to do for what's best for you. So that was this week's My Life with ADHD. I look forward to seeing you guys next week, and I hope you guys have a great week. Let's work on some of these things together. Bye, guys!